Welcome. We are back finally after a long summer. So glad you guys tuned in tonight. Thank you for joining Image Builders Present, a conversation with Michael Carson. I'm your host, Michael Carson. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to have an excellent conversation with my guest. I'm excited about my guest tonight, but more importantly, I'm excited about you being here with me and you sticking with our show. Still fairly new show, so we're still working out some things, but hopefully you'll like the direction we're going into. If you're watching the show on Facebook, please click the like button and click that share button. Let people know we're on the air live tonight, and so that they can follow us going forward. I think we've connected to Foolery's Facebook page. So if you're joining us from Foolery, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. You know my special guest very well, so we're going to represent you guys as well tonight. If you are joining us on YouTube, please click that subscribe button and let us know what you think about the broadcast, and make sure you click the bell so that you'll be notified. So tonight, as we kick off our fall series, this is the first of a couple of shows that we're going to do on Black entrepreneurship, and I have a young woman, mom, entrepreneur, businesswoman, lecturer, who's going to, give you guys a wealth of information tonight. So let me introduce to some and welcome in tonight my guest, my niece by marriage, Mrs. Rachel Gregoire. What's up, Rach?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you tonight. I've been wanting to get you and your my shy nephew on. So I was like, I'll reach out to my niece. I know she'd come on, but I don't know if we could. Chris did come on for Father's Day, so I say that he did come on and gave a shout out on Father's Day. But I am so grateful to have you on tonight to talk about your work, because I think it's some important work, not only around being an entrepreneur, but your work in the IDI space and the diversity and inclusion space. So to kick us off, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your story. Who is Rachel Gregoire?
All right. Well, to start off, shout out to your shy nephew because he's holding it down for the Gregoires tonight. He's on baby duty with Araya, because anybody knows I would not be able to do this interview if she didn't have some distraction going on in the background. Right. And also shout out to my co-founder and partner in crime, because 3 days ago it was his birthday.
Excellent. Yep. Happy birthday, Chris.
Yeah. And so, just about us, Foolery, we are finding innovative ways to cultivate, convene, and celebrate culture. And one of the main innovative ways we're doing that is through gameplay. So just a teaser, because I know we're going to talk more about our game later on. But, in short, what all that fancy language means is we are creating spaces for people to just have, it's not always comfortable, so I won't say comfortable conversation, but at least creating a space to have real dialogue around culture, because in a lot of ways we ain't doing it right. And this because at work, a lot of times people see diversity, equity, and inclusion on the calendar, and they kind of cringe at the thought. So we're just trying to change how people think about these conversations, because they're so important.
So what does it mean to be a professor of management of intercultural diversity? What is the I part, IDI? What does it mean to be that? What is required? I mean, what does that mean for just a lay person who's like, well, what is that?
Yeah.
So is that a fancy word for diversity and inclusion?
So it's two separate classes that I teach. One is HR management, which is probably feels more familiar to most people. And then the other part is the other section I teach is intercultural management, which, anybody in higher ed knows we love to use all this fancy language. But basically what we talk about in our class is, how do we come together and work productively with people from all these different backgrounds? Because the truth of the matter is that anytime conflict comes up, is almost always a misunderstanding,
Mhm.
because the way that most of us deal with cultural differences and even situations of conflict, it just comes from our own experiences. A lot of it is foundational, meaning we learn it from our parents, but it bleeds into our work and can impact our productivity. And so the IDI specifically that you asked about, the IDI stands for Intercultural Development Inventory. More fun tongue twisting for you. I'm proud of myself for being able to do that at 6:00 p.m. On a Thursday. But what that stands for is it's an assessment that helps people to see exactly where they are on their journey, or in the world of IDI, as we call, on the continuum to growing your cultural competency. Most people, I tell you right now, and this goes for you and me too, Mike. So I'm not calling anybody out who's listening, but most people, if I were to ask you, to rate whatever your level of cultural competency are, we all tend to overestimate where we
Yeah.
are on that journey and think that we are better at communicating with people from different cultures. And, we tend to think that we are better received from other cultural groups than we often are. So for many people, the assessment is an eye opener, to help them to be able to see where they have opportunities for growth.
So, what have you, in your studies and in your lectures and your teaching, what have you learned about yourself and learned about individuals? What are some of the biggest misnomers? I know we were listening to, I'll say this real quick. We were listening to a radio station. We still follow V103 in Chicago. And one of the DJs said, it's late night. It's time for everybody to go get something to eat. And she was like, well, let's go to Jewtown. And I'm like, did she say Jewtown on the radio? Is that, I mean, but that's what people equate this particular establishment, this area with. But I'm like, haven't we gotten past that? And then when she came back on the air, she mentioned the establishment again, but she mentioned them by name. She didn't mention them by that term, which culturally is inappropriate and could be demeaning. So what have you learned about yourself and learned about others as you've lectured and been in this space?
To be honest, I've learned that I'm no better than that radio host that you're talking about. And we
Mhm.
all say a lot of things, and it's part of American culture, really. A lot of these derogatory ways of thinking and speaking, it's just a part of our culture. And you shared a story, so you brought one to my mind. The other day I was listening to the radio, and there was a woman who was obviously a little more experienced in life. And she
Mhm.
said, and she was talking about young people. And she was like, a lot of
Mhm.
these young moms are out here dressing their sons like gangbangers. They're wearing earrings in their ears and Jordans. And
Mhm.
and I'm sharing that to say that sometimes we are even sending the wrong message to other cultures about our own culture. Because when I was listening to her talk, I'm like, earrings and Jordans, that don't sound like a gangbanger. That sounds like my husband, who is an engineer.
Right, right,
So,
right.
so if I could say that I've learned anything, it's that, entering this space, I'll be honest, I thought, I'm a Black woman, like, what do I need to
Mhm.
read and learn about in terms of cultural diversity? I'm my life is the forefront of that. But what I realized is that while I may be pretty in tune into the issues that women face, that Black women
Mhm.
face, I am not as in tune with the issues that our Muslim brothers and sisters face, or that
Mhm.
Jewish people face, or that the LGBTQ plus community face. And so I think, it really just opened my eyes to see that, I may not be as woke as I thought I was going
Mhm.
into this space.
So if someone is watching this and they work for a global company, uh, is diversity and inclusion and intercultural diversity inventory, is that realistic for a global company? I mean, we say it a lot. We promote it, we teach it, but when you have so many people coming from so many different backgrounds, from so many different classes. Because sometimes I think when we get in the D&I space, it's also about class as well. And we don't really touch on class a lot, because even in our own culture, there's some issues, from, depending on what organization you belong to or whatever, even in our own culture. So is that even a realistic goal for a global community or a company?
Well, Mike, don't get me started, right? Like a lot of times, conversations around culture, you make the assumption that, for example, the Black experience is a monolithic one. And the truth is, just like the example I gave of the radio host, that's a Black woman I'm talking about, who we're
Right.
talking about, young Black moms like that. And so obviously with her age range and mine, we have a total different perspective. And when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we always think about ethnicity and we think about race, but I think the deeper complexities come in with the areas you can't see, like you brought up,
Yeah.
like economic status or your religion or your political status.
Yeah.
And, I teach for a predominantly white institution. And so, I will be completely transparent that there have been times where I've had a class and I'm like, okay, I got a little backup in here. I see some faces of color, but
Right.
these are
Right.
they Trump they people of color, but they Trump supporters, or so
Yeah.
you can't. And I'm sharing that not to say anything is wrong with that, but I'm saying that's not what you
Right.
expect when you see
Yeah.
a Black person. And so to
And-
your question of whether or not DEI is realistic, I think DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is 3 different things, and they're very
Right.
broad topics. So it depends on what that global organization is trying to accomplish.
Now you are a mom of a toddler. Araya's a toddler now. She's considered a toddler.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
what is your advice to moms as they navigate this space? Like, kids learn what they learn from their parents. Kids just want to play. We found with our first son, the first 4 years, it's me, myself, and I. So they're dealing like my. But for the most part, kids just want to play with other kids. They don't really know race, and they don't really know ethnicity, and so forth and so on. So, what is your advice to young, Black women, or white women for that matter, in this space? How do they be better moms when it comes to raising their kids in this space and being more culturally aware and so forth?
Well, but like you said, Araya is too. So am I really in a position to
Well,
give
I mean, I'm
anybody
sure,
advice yet? But no,
right?
I
But
know
I'm
what you
sure but I'm sure that's something you guys will have to think about. But have you thought about it? Maybe it's a
Oh,
premature.
no, absolutely. I've definitely
Right.
thought about it. And it's how I was able to answer my question earlier, to say, I know I'm no better than the person who, gets canceled on Twitter because they make the wrong comment live. Because I've had to catch myself, honestly, already in conversations I'm having with Araya. And most people wouldn't share stories like this, and I think that's what's lacking a lot of times in the DEI space, is that lack of transparency. So I'll tell you, it was one day we were outside playing and Araya was running around. She was trying to get away from me, but then she fell. And I'm like, I said something to the effect, "Oh, come on now, Araya, you acting like a white woman." But that's the stereotype of what happens to them in horror
Whoa.
movies. We know in the Black community, we say stuff
Right.
like that all the time
Right.
behind closed doors. But I called myself, I'm like, Rachel, you are a professor of intercultural
Right.
competency. You're gonna have your daughter in preschool talk, repeating
Right.
information like this. So I think, if I was to give any advice, is just to just be self-aware and
Yeah.
not be afraid to call yourself out and show, be transparent with your kids that we all have some imperfect ways of thinking about other groups.
Right.
And other
You know what I was thinking when you said that? It would have been funny if she would have turned around to you and was like, "What you talking about, Willis? What is a white woman?" They're like, "What is a white woman, mommy? I don't know what a white woman is." They
right,
tell you
right.
that woman. What is a white woman?
Right.
So I want to one final question, and this relates to your HR work. What are you telling millennials who are fresh out of college? They what is one or two bits of advice you can give millennials fresh out of college? Or like, I kind of know what I want to do, but I really don't know what I want to do. I really haven't, I don't really have a strong resume. I really just have college experience for the most part. What should I be thinking about?
Man, well, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if that question is unique to millennials or Gen, what is it, Y or Z that's entering the workforce
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
In my previous life, before I was focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I spent a good 10 years of my career in career management. And so I know that I talk to a lot of 40-year-olds who are still, asking that question, like, I've been doing this for all this time and I don't know what I want to do next. And so I think it's a falsehood to have in mind that one day you're just going to wake up and say, like, oh, this is what I know I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I think what you just should be more focused on, instead of getting hung up on the titles that you're trying to achieve, is being fully conscious about the competencies that you come to the table with. Because I mean, this was the case even before COVID-19, but the world is just changing at a pace faster than any other time in history. And
Yeah.
so you can have, there's a lot of people, and I work with coaching a lot of professionals in the healthcare administration arena. And so a lot of the career paths that the graduates within the last 1 to 2 years had in mind, their path has completely changed. So but that doesn't mean that the skills that are required of you to be successful, or that the knowledge that you obtained is not valuable. And so all too often I just see people getting very hung up on a title or a company. But with all these mergers and acquisitions and changes, you just got to be flexible and
Right.
fully aware of what you can bring to the table.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. We're through the halfway point. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Michael Carson. My guest tonight is the multi-talented Rachel Gregoire. She's an entrepreneur, businesswoman, mom, wife, just a fantastic niece by marriage. So I'm honored that she's on our show tonight. We're going to make a transition over to Fan Foolery. But before we do that, if you're watching via Facebook, make sure that you click that like and share button. And if you're watching us via YouTube, make sure you click the subscribe button and that bell. And if you're new to this platform or new to Conversation with Michael Carson, we're here every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time for about 30 minutes. And you guys might be saying, man, we wanted to hear more about Fan Foolery. We're going to get into Fan Foolery, but we also want you to know, as is on the screen, we want you to pop over to Instagram right after this, because Rachel and I are going to continue the conversation on Instagram, and that's at Michael Carson Jr. on Instagram. So Fan Foolery. When you called me up and you was like, we got this name, we have this game, we want to protect it. And I'm like, okay, tell people what is the company Fan Foolery Inc. And then we want to talk about your game, your card game, Trap Wars, which is a great game, by the way. I didn't do so well when I play it. Even when I watch you online, I don't do so well. I think because I'm slow to do whatever is necessary. But tell people, what is Fan Foolery and about Trap Wars.
Okay, so if you've been with us since the start of the conversation, you've already heard that Foolery, what we're doing is finding innovative ways to cultivate, convene, and celebrate culture. And there are some people, Mike, I know, who are listening in who are like, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I
Right.
I thought she just hosts game nights, because most people know
Yeah.
about us because we are the creators of the game called Trap Wars, the urban game
Yeah.
night experience. And I don't have to tell most people there's just a deficit of games out there that that are made for us by us, because that's one thing. There's
Mhm.
some games out there, but then when you look it up, they're not Black owned and created.
Mhm.
And so really, what you're talking about, the story back when I reached out to you, I guess this would be 3 years ago, to
Yeah.
tell you the idea. You might have had that thought because we probably sounded all over the place. I think when people think about a game company, they think that, like, oh, it was probably something
Mhm.
really fun that motivated us to get started. But the truth is, at the time I reached out to you, we were going through one of the most difficult seasons I've ever faced in my life.
Mhm.
We've talked a lot now about Araya, and so people know I have a 2-year-old. But the first time I was expecting, we actually lost the baby really far along into my pregnancy. I was maybe 6 or 7 months. It was just a difficult season. We lost the baby in a very public way. I feel like we found out the day after, like I made a post on Facebook or something
Mhm.
announcing it. It was the day before Thanksgiving. And so, in that season, many of you listening are no stranger to difficult times and difficult seasons. And so, that in those moments, a lot of people just don't know what to do or what to say, what is even the right thing to do or to say. In that season, as difficult as it was, my family is one, and usually it's encouraged by me the most, but we get
Yeah.
together and we play games, and we kind of petty, and I don't think they care what's going on with you.
Right.
And so it was
Right.
when we were having our game nights that I felt just, I just felt like myself.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I realized that there was just power in
Mhm.
gameplay, that we could create something and that is my prayer for anybody who buys Trap Wars, is that it is
Yeah.
creating meaningful moments and maybe even being a source of joy and healing. And little did I know that 2 years later, everybody would be in a season of difficulty
Yeah.
because the whole world would be shut down. And
Yeah.
so our premier game, called Trap Wars, the Urban Game Night is experience. It's a guessing game, a party game that can be played in really large groups, or you could just have a small group of
Mhm.
four. But you are given clues, trying to get your team to guess the word or a phrase that you're describing. And all the words in the game represent Black culture and Black history. Mike, you started off by saying you're not that good at it. I was ready to put you on the spot tonight and show,
Oh, well,
because
come on, come on. I mean,
you gotta
I,
show.
I was being a little humble, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I may look, but depends on the time period. So,
Depends on
so
time period. Okay.
don't let the grade fool you in one sense, but then let the grade, acknowledge the time period. So, if there's anything about '90s R&B which I don't acknowledge, I know my nephews don't want to hear it. I can't answer it, but for the
I'm
most
not
part,
even listen, I'm not gonna get you started, because you and that side of the family and y'all musical and sport debates. And so you saw us holding up two boxes. We have two versions
right?
of the game. One that's the original edition, and then we have a Black history
Okay,
edition as well. And so, well, you know what? We're talking about entrepreneurship tonight,
okay,
right? So
all
the
right,
card I'm gonna choose first will be in honor of that. And so this is
okay.
one of the most noteworthy entrepreneurs in Black history. It's also a sister.
Madam
Um,
C.J. Walker.
yeah, you knew where I was going, and really, I cheated. I'm not supposed to
Yeah,
say entrepreneur
you're not supposed
on
to
this
say
card.
right. I was going to say you said one of the words.
I
So,
did,
but
but
thank you, thank you for the softball. I appreciate that.
that's all right. And you
I
know
didn't
what?
want
At
to
the
be embarrassed. I didn't want to be embarrassed on my own show where we talk about culture, and I didn't know Madam C.J. Walker. So,
no,
but
and you know
you
what?
know,
I'm glad I did that, because that gives me a chance to share one of the most
yeah,
fun parts of the game, is that when you are playing, if we were playing live and Chris was right here, like watching to make sure I'm not saying words I'm not supposed to, since I said entrepreneur, he could snatch this card from
yeah,
me on the spot and steal my turn. And that's what we
yeah.
call the trap snatch. And that's usually where all the fun and the drama begins.
Excellent, excellent. So how did you pitch this idea to funders? Did you pitch it to a bank? Did you guys finance it? So if I'm watching and I'm like, well, I got a great idea for a game, and a card game, a board game, what have you, or a video game. How did you pitch this, and where do people go to get funding?
So we did not get funding for Foolery. We invested out of our pocket. And I don't know. In terms of my recommendation to other entrepreneurs, I don't know
Mhm.
what route makes sense. For us, starting off, like I mentioned, our story is a little different because it wasn't a well planned out, to be honest,
Right.
start. And so and in retrospect, I'm glad that we didn't get major funding and then buy,
Mhm.
tens of thousands of games because we made changes, shortly
Right.
after we got
Right.
the small inventory that we did. But, when I go back and think in retrospect, I see a lot of people, game creators, who do like the crowdfunding,
Crowdfunding.
where it's a really good way to gauge whether or not the world is even interested in your idea. You put it
Mhm.
out there, you tell people that if so many people place these pre-orders, we're going to put it in place. So I know in the time that we've been in this business, I've connected with a small network of other Black game creators. I thought I was
Mhm.
doing something like so innovative, but no, we out here. And I got some good recommendations for you all as well. I'm not gonna shout them out because this is about Trap Wars, but um, but on the side, if you already got
Yeah.
Trap Wars, I know some great Black game creatives. And so even though we didn't get funding, Mike, I will share that one of the biggest lessons I've learned in this space is that people historically used to recommend, like they would say, oh, I know of this other Black creative, you should connect with them. And at first I was so
Mhm.
hesitant to do that because
Yeah.
we get sold this idea that Black people don't support other Black businesses. And so I'm thinking like crabs in the barrel, they're not going to want to connect with me. But the truth
Right.
is, it's once I did that and developed this small network of other Black creatives, we started marketing together. We started just sharing ideas, and honestly, our business went to a whole new level. So, if any advice I have for any entrepreneurs that are listening is, it's not saying that the crabs in the barrel idea is
Mhm.
not true in any context, but I think in any culture you have people out there who are haters. That's not a
Right.
quality of a Black business owner, and you'll be surprised that because most entrepreneurs know how hard it is
Mhm.
to start a business, but there's not enough conversation around how difficult it is to maintain and scale
Right.
and grow your business.
Right.
Most
Right.
entrepreneurs just got respect for you for being in the game with them, and they will support and help you all to grow together however you can.
Now, you guys, your game has, we've seen your game played by a number of people, celebrities, actors. What was the strategy for promoting it? And then, do you find that non-melanated people, are they playing the game? Are they interested in the game? What is their reception to it?
Yeah, two really good questions. So in terms, we had some of the actors from Tyler Perry's show called Sisters. They went live playing our
Deb's
game.
favorite show, by the way.
Oh, is it?
One of her favorite binges is Sisters. Yeah, but
Hey, shout out to Deb, one of the first Black women entrepreneurs I've seen early in my life, inspiring me. So if she wants, she's done so much. If she wanted to chill
yeah.
out, veg out, and watch Sisters, let her be. But but honestly, some of the connections that we have made and people who have become advocates for our game, all I could
Mhm.
just chalk it up to is the grace of God, because we do strategically, like, we'll reach out to people, but I mean, like I said, we're self-funded, so we don't have a lot of extra cash to be paying for like guest appearances. And so that's what made me say, wow, we really, Black people really do come together and support it, because the
Mhm.
actress KJ Smith from Sisters, I literally just sent her a DM on Instagram,
Mhm.
told her what we were doing, and it turns out that she has a family history of Black entrepreneurs in her family and loves the
Okay.
idea of doing anything to support. So I mean, maybe the message there to anybody listening is just not being scared to reach out to
Right.
people and ask, and budget in whatever you can. But for the most part, we just offer to send folks a free game, and if they're willing to promote. And but sometimes, and even me, sometimes I have the thought like, oh, this person ain't gonna respond, or they so
Yeah.
busy, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
So really just having the courage to reach out. And to your question about white people, so I mentioned to you earlier, I teach at a predominantly white institution. Some of my
Mhm.
clients, major corporations, $1 million foundations. So it's white people in there playing.
Yeah.
and and you know what? They love it because,
Yeah.
first of all, Black culture is it's not, we categorize
Everywhere.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
Black culture is,
Everywhere.
we are a part of, a
Yeah.
significant part of
Yeah.
American culture, and history. And so I think that they enjoy it because conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion are oftentimes tension filled. It This is a way of showing people that it doesn't all is that's important, but it doesn't always have to be that, and it's, you
Right.
know, we're not looking for you to feel sorry for us because we're Black. Because if I had to choose, I wouldn't be anything else. But we're asking for you to be better informed. And so this game is a
Right.
way of doing it because it brings up conversation. You talk about edges, and somebody who is not Black in the room is like, edges, what are you
It
talking
is
about?
as well.
It's like, it's why I had to get ready for this interview 30
Right.
minutes early. I
Right.
needed time to put mascara on, and but they don't know. They
Yeah.
don't know anything about that. So
Yeah.
I think it's so beneficial, not to just Black people, but to everybody, because it opens up the door for us to have conversation, not
Yeah.
just about aspects of Black culture, but aspects of all cultures that you just, you don't know about. Because that's what they say. They're like, oh, well, that's like our delicacy food that most of you wouldn't know about,
Right.
of
Right.
XYZ. So
And then for so many years, we've had to, in other games, I won't name them, but other games we've had to try to figure out stuff, or to survey from 100 people, like, y'all ain't talked to nobody Black, or y'all ain't talked to a
oh
person of color, because that is not how we would have answered that question. So it's so good
okay.
to see. It's so good that this game is available, and even some stuff that you guys are putting out in the future. So we are past our time, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I want to give you the final word before let you have a final word before we close. Just tell the people whatever's on your heart, however you want to promote Foolery, or what is it you want to give a closing thought on.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing that I will say is just that, for one, if this is the first time you're hearing about fanfoolery and trap words, and you're like, "Oh, my friends or family would love this," buying the game is a great way to support, but it's not the only way. Following us, sharing us with your network, that is a great way to not only support us, but to support other Black businesses. I think we got to think more complex about how we can support one another. And then I actually will use my closing minutes really to just give kudos to you, Mike, because I've watched many of episodes of what you're doing with these conversations, and it's just so important. I mean, people be on here really dropping gems. And so when you first was saying, "Are you available to do a show?" I'm like, me? Like, okay, but
Yeah, and you dropped some
so,
and you dropped some gems tonight. So I mean, I ain't having no, I'm not just having anybody on here. So I appreciate the work that you and Chris is doing, and your knowledge. And so I tell everybody, I have the smartest, the best nieces and nephews, those by blood, those by marriage. So I'm fortunate to have an opportunity to reach out to you. So I really appreciate it. How do people get the game if they want to buy it, and reach out to you on social media?
So we are Foolery, so short for family, Foolery, just like you're seeing in my background everywhere. So famfoolery.com is where you can order the game. We're also on Amazon if you insist on ordering from Amazon. And then we're also on Instagram and Facebook at Foolery.
Again, thank you so much, Rachel, for being on tonight. For those of you, again, that are joining us for the first time, please tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern for another conversation with Michael Carson. Rachel and I are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to hop over to Instagram. So if you want to join us on Instagram, you want to join the conversation, there's a few more questions I did not ask her. I actually had like 16 questions. We got through a lot of them in this short period of time, but I'm sure there's going to be some things that we'll discuss over there that we didn't discuss here on this show. Two quick things I want to give, two quick shout outs to entrepreneurs. One is a friend and one is my son. The first is to my friend David Daniels, who ID2 Solutions, anything around security and particularly workforce security, he knows what he's talking about. But I wanted to shout him out tonight because he He is now Dr. David Daniels. He defended his dissertation today, so I want to give a big shout out to him. And secondly, but not least of all, my son, Michael Carson III. He's on Instagram under Mike Carson. His commercial with Nike and Megan Thee Stallion dropped. He's the director of it, and he has his own company, 92 LLC, which is a video company and a creative director company. So I just wanted to shout out them because they're doing some amazing work. One young Black entrepreneur, two people who I highly respect. And again, thank you so much, Rachel, for being on here tonight. And for everyone who's joining me, until next time, continued blessings. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning into Conversation. Thank you for tuning into Conversations with Michael Carson. Join us here each Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for engaging and insightful conversations. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have not already done so, don't forget to click the share button on Facebook and the subscribe button on YouTube. The conversation doesn't stop here. Head over to Instagram and join us on Michael Carson Jr. starting shortly. See you soon, and until next time, continue blessing.